When I first started hearing rumors about the A7C, a lot of people speculated that this will be a full-frame camera for around $1,000 to compete against the Canon EOS RP and the recently released Nikon Z5. But what Sony has actually done is to basically take the internals from the A7 III and squeeze them into a smaller body that resembles the A6000 series, give it a fully articulating screen, and put on a price tag of $1,800. So with a sensor from a camera that's almost 3 years old in a smaller entry-level body with less controls, Sony must be quite confident that this will sell at this price, but who exactly is this for? Should you get this instead of the A7 III, or should you save $500 and get an A6600? Well, after playing around with this camera for a couple weeks, I realized that this isn't just a hybrid of the A7 III and the A6600. There are many attributes that make this camera unique, which means this should appeal to a very specific group of people. If you just buy this thinking that it's a mini A7 III or a full-frame A6600, there are many things you might be disappointed by. So as always, I'm gonna tell you everything that I love and hate about this camera so you can make informed decisions on your next purchase. Like I mentioned, the A7C has the same 24 megapixel full-frame sensor from the A7 III, and even though it is almost 3 years old, it is still one of the best sensors on the market with its excellent low light performance and dynamic range. As expected, the images were pretty much identical, but I noticed the color was very slightly different. Probably not even enough to worth mentioning it, but when shot at same white balance, the A7C's images seem to have a tiny bit more green in them. Like with the A7 III, you can expect about a stop better performance in low light compared to the A6600, and of course, with the full frame sensor, you can now have that extra shallow depth of field. If you're a video shooter, you'll be glad to know that the A7C has unlimited recording and eye detection and tracking like the A6600. And probably one of the biggest features that sets this apart from the A7 III, the A7C has a fully articulating screen. And right now, the only other Sony full frame camera that has all these features is the A7S III, which costs $1,700 more. The A7 III was already a pretty small camera, but on the A7C, the viewfinder has been relocated to the top left corner like on the A6000 series, so you gain about an inch of clearance at the top, and the whole camera is about 140 grams lighter than the A7 III and just about 6 grams heavier than the A6600. While using this normally with a full frame lens attached, I didn't really feel a huge difference in weight and size compared to the A7 III, but with a screen that flips out to the side and the extra headroom at the top, this design might be more ideal if you shoot a lot with a gimbal. And there's more. On the A6600, the memory card slot is in the battery compartment, and with some tripods and gimbals, it can be tricky to get into it. On the A7C, the card slot has been moved to the left side of the camera so you can easily access it whenever you want to. It's only a single slot, and 2 would have been nice at this price range, but at least it's UHS 2, unlike on the A6600. Like on the A7S III, the mode dial has been rearranged so the manual and movie mode are right next to each other, and the movie record button has been moved to the top of the camera so it's easier to access when you're in front of the camera. Okay, so everything sounds great so far, but what are some of the things that I don't like about this camera? I mentioned in the beginning of this video that this is not just a rebranded mini A7 III, and I actually meant that in both positive and negative ways, because while the smaller size is nice, it actually loses a lot of the useful features as well. I already mentioned the single card slot, and compared to the A7 III, the A7C loses 4 custom buttons, the front dial, and the joystick. They didn't just switch the movie record button with one of the C buttons like on the A7S III, they completely removed them. You might think that's just because it's a smaller camera, but apart from the viewfinder, the overall volume of the camera isn't that different from the A6600, but the 3 custom buttons are clearly present on that camera as well. The front of the grip is completely wasted and you have to change all your settings just with your thumb. This isn't that different from the A6600, but I wish the exposure compensation dial wasn't dedicated to just that one task, so you can customize it as something else. And although the A7C looks like the A6600 at a glance, the grip is actually more like the A6400's. I'm all for small and light cameras, but you have to remember this is a full-frame interchangeable lens camera. This grip is not very comfortable, and with any heavier lenses attached, the camera really doesn't feel secure in my hand. So some of you might think it's okay for some cameras to not have dozens of buttons and dials because most cameras nowadays have very good touchscreens. Well, we all saw the new menu design on the A7S III with the touch capabilities, but guess what? It's not on the A7C. But despite being a newer camera, we're still back on the old menu. And I understand this is new to Sony, but I think the ports and the port covers could have been designed better. The top two opens to the left, but the bottom one opens down for some reason, and when you have your headphones plugged in, it can interfere with the rotation of the screen. It's better than how it was on the A7S III, but come on Sony, you can do better than this. I also talked about the clips on the A7S III and how they made them thicker so they don't jiggle about. Well, guess what? Apparently that's another premium feature and you don't get them on the A7C. Before the announcement, there were many speculations about if this camera will have a viewfinder or not. Some said it might be a pop-up style viewfinder like on the RX100 series, or it could be a detachable one like on the Canon M6. But Sony did include the viewfinder on the A7C, and normally I'll be glad they did, but this viewfinder is really tiny and you practically have to stick your eyeball into the window to be able to see the whole screen. The resolution is unchanged from the A7 III's viewfinder, but the size has been reduced from 0.5 inches to 0.39 inches, and the magnification ratio is down from 0.78x to 0.59x. Sony also managed to fit a 5-axis stabilization on this body, and it worked okay paired up with a stabilized lens, but it's not the best on its own. The active mode that I saw on the A7S III was also gone. Sony added gyro data to the A7C, which can be used in the Sony Catalyst software to digitally stabilize the footage, but the app kept crashing every time I tried to use the feature, so I couldn't test that at all. In 4K video, rolling shutter is still present, even though it seems a little better than the X6600, and although I had no complaints about the image quality, some users might be disappointed by the fact that it still doesn't have 4K 60, you're gonna have to get that on the A7S III, which is expected, but at this price point it would have been nice for them to differentiate the video specs a little bit more from the A7 III and the A6600. But they did make sure to differentiate the photo specs because they reduced the maximum shutter speed to 1/4000th of a second from 1/8000th of a second on the A7 III, and the maximum flash sync speed is also down from 1/250th of a second to 1/160th. Overall, I think the A7C will mostly appeal to hobbyists and prosumer video shooters who want the best image quality and a compact body, but who don't necessarily want to pay $3,500 for an A7S III. If you shoot more photos than videos, then the A7 III still might be the better value for you because you can easily find one cheaper now, and the body feels a lot better, and there are many features that are more useful for shooting photos, and the viewfinder is a lot nicer as well. On the other hand, I would not recommend getting the A7C if you just want a smaller A7 III for stills. Obviously, I'm not saying it can't be used for stills, you can do whatever you want, but if you like to shoot in manual and change your settings a lot, this just isn't the most ideal body for that. And yes, the camera is small now, but again, this is a full frame camera, so you also have to think about what lenses you're going to be using with it. Sure, there are some smaller full frame lenses too, but after paying $1,800 for a camera, I would rather not limit my lens selection. If portability is really what you're looking for, the A6600 will have more options for smaller and lighter lenses that are also a lot more affordable. But if more than 80% of your work is video, the A7C will give you unlimited recording, better autofocus, and the more compact body will be easier to work with on a gimbal. Unlike stills, you're probably not going to be constantly changing your settings while shooting a video, so the lack of buttons and dials might be justified there. So to sum it all up, I'm very happy with the video specs and image quality of the A7C, but the body just does not feel like an $1,800 camera. When Sony came out with the A7 III, they basically threw in everything they could think of on a $2,000 body and shook up the entire camera industry. But 2.5 years later, Sony has a lot more to lose. On literally every single corner, you can see so clearly how they chiseled away all the features so it doesn't hurt the sales of the A7 III, the A7S III, and also the A6600. But obviously at the same time, I guess you can't blame camera manufacturers for giving us more options. You just have to carefully choose one camera that works for you instead of looking for one that can do everything. So that's going to be it for me today. Thank you for watching, and as always, if you have any more questions about the A7C, just leave a comment down below and I'll try to get to them all, and I will see you in the next video. Bye bye.